Welcome to the First Read Ultimate Spider-Man podcast, where we break down Bendis' iconic run on Ultimate Spider-Man, issues 1 through 160 in Earth 1610. I'm Zach.
And I'm John. Good morning, good afternoon.
Good morning. Not quite afternoon yet, but will be by the time we finish recording. What have you got on this fine Saturday?
Oh, I just got breakfast at the original Pancake House.
Nice.
And I'm just in an Avengers sort of mood. I was listening to the theme earlier this morning to get pumped. I thought about playing it for us when we joined in, but then I remembered how poorly the Monday Night Football audio came through when I tried to do that, so I didn't.
Yeah. And as far as getting copyright, strikes against us, we know that, the NFL and Disney are not two companies you generally want to make enemies with.
Yeah. How's your morning? It's Saturday.
It is. Yeah, it's good. Been pretty productive. I actually read a non-Marvel comic for the first time in what feels like forever this morning. So that was a nice
Harry
little
Potter?
refresher. It was not Harry Potter. It was it's called The Department of Truth. I have it right here.
Ooh, that sounds good.
Yeah, it's kind of like a political conspiracy mind frick kind of thing.
Oh, maybe you'll have to tell us about it later on in our something else.
I don't know why, but whenever I read independent comics, I feel like most of them end up being that kind of story.
Is it a graphic novel?
I think it was released in actual like floppy issues, but I have like a volume of it, so it's kind of collected.
Nice.
Yeah. But speaking of Avengers or Ultimates or whatever we want to call them, I think I told you maybe off the pod last week that I found some like direct to video cartoon from back in the day that Marvel did called The Ultimate Avengers that was based off of this. I found that it's on YouTube and I watched like half of it to see how accurate it was to this run and to the Avengers movie. And it actually wasn't bad. It was pretty accurate to this comic run for, about as much of it as I, watched. They just like PG-ified it. Whereas this comic I think it gets PG-13 in some places, and we'll definitely see that next week. But
is it worth the bonus episode? Should we watch it and review it live?
I don't think it would be, because it'd be a lot of recapping.
Leave us a comment.
Yes, if people ask for it, we can do it, but I feel like it'll be kind of redundant to the comic series because it's so similar.
Okay.
But I was just mentioning that I did that, and that was just on my mind.
Oh, that's great.
It was kind of cool.
And Zach texted me a couple of days ago. He's sending me a live copy of a comic. What is it? Another Ultimates thing?
Oh yeah, no. If it gets here in time, we might have to change
When I get a text that's over 3 sentences long, the first part gets read, and then I'm like, oh, Zach is sending me something. Okay. I'll see what it is when I get the mail.
Yeah, the funny thing is you asked me, what are you sending me? And then apparently didn't read my response.
I was like, a comic. Great. Got it.
Yeah. I'll try to be more concise now knowing that. Well, if it gets here in time, it should be our next episode. If the mail gets delayed or anything, we might have to, fly by the seat of our pants and improvise. But it's something that's just not on Marvel Unlimited. It's an Ultimate Spider-Man issue that I think was like a bonus that was part of like Wizard magazine. It's called Spider-Man 1.5 or 1/2.
Oh, well, that'll be fun. That's like a bonus episode in it of itself.
Yeah. I don't think it's supposed to be super continuity heavy, but it does take place in our story.
Well, on that, should we get into it? Should we throw it to the Better Business Bureau and then get into it? Do you have any other things that happened to you this week that you want to share at the top of the hour?
Nope. I think now's a good time to send it over to our sponsor.
Every business says they're better. but the ones that earn and display the BBB seal back it up. It instantly identifies businesses that are committed to operating with integrity, honoring promises, and telling the truth. Makes you wonder why every business doesn't have it. So look for it, because it's looking out for you. That's why it's the sign of a better business. And find a better business anytime at bbb.org.
We're back. Ultimates assemble.
That was last episode, or the last Ultimates episode. That's what we named it.
Yeah, but we didn't say that in the last one. They're kind of assembling in this one. I felt a little more,
more assembled.
Avengers, exactly. Like I said, I think I've had the Avengers theme running through my head since I read it.
That theme goes to everything.
Or the Ultimates theme, I know.
Yeah.
Okay, so today we're doing Ultimates issue 4 and 5, and without me readily having last week's stuff pulled up, where did we leave? Cap is unfrozen. They're about to start a team. George Bush says he looks totally cool, and he and Tony Stark are there, and Hank Pym is huge, and Janet is naked, which maybe that'll come back in this week's episode.
It might come back a lot. Thor, we've kind of gotten hints that maybe he's like not the Thor we're used to. Maybe he's like some hippie, bleeding heart liberal.
Did we get that?
Activist.
Did we get a hint like that in the last episode?
I think they made some like offhand comments, and we saw that he was like living with like a commune of people.
Okay. I have some things to say about Thor from this week's, so I can't wait to get to him.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah, I'm sure we both will.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's an interesting and different character. It's hard to say much about other people who are maybe less defined when he just comes in and every scene. It's like the point is look at how different Thor is.
Okay, well, I think that is enough teasing. And should we get to it?
We shall.
Okay. Issue 4. I have my Captain America socks on, by the way. I won't show you because I don't think I'm flexible enough to, but I wore my Captain America socks for today. So issue 4, even though this is called Thunder. And Zach, I didn't see who we are crediting. So if you have the people to credit, then I'll throw it to you for a second.
The whole series is written by Mark Millar and penciled by Brian Hitch, but I did have trouble finding like the inker, the letter, the color, or any of that information for these issues.
Okay. Well, we got him. Mark Millar, Brian Hitch.
Yep.
Issue 4, Thunder. Tony Stark is on a space shuttle with beautiful actress Shannon Elizabeth, and without looking it up, Zach, do you know who this actress is? I had to look it up right before we started this.
I had no clue. Like, I could tell it was a real person the way they're talking about her, but I couldn't have recognized her or named anything she's in.
Well, when I was reading it, I was like, this is probably just like a fake actress because I don't recognize her name. And then just now I looked it up to make sure, and it is Nadia from the American Pie movies, who around this time in 2002 was a pretty famous sex symbol in the United States, I would say. So very timely from the Ultimates here.
Yeah, that lines up with pretty much what I was expecting it to be. Because I mean, this series, even more so than like the Ultimate Spider-Man series, this feels like a time capsule for
Definitely.
like the early 2000s.
Definitely. So much of these two issues just put me right back in like to the 2002, 2003. George Bush. Yeah.
Cue the Blink 182.
I was thinking cue the Linkin Park, but
oh yeah.
Yeah. So Tony Stark is on a space shuttle with Shannon Elizabeth, and he's being interviewed by a quite young looking Larry King. And Larry is questioning if all the money being diverted to the Ultimates is really necessary. He's like, what if it's 10 years before another supervillain like Magneto shows up? What if it never happens? And Zach, I was gonna let you give us. Is that something we should know about? It sounds like something happened with Magneto like 10 years ago, and it's like the only real supervillain thing that's ever happened. Was that like a big thing?
No, I mean, he's been kind of a menace in general over in the pages of Ultimate X-Men, but that would have been recent to them. He's not
Okay.
saying 10 years ago Magneto hit. He's saying, what if
Okay.
it's another 10 years before we need someone to fight
Okay.
at Magneto?
Yeah. And Tony is like, no way. That's crazy. They're like medical insurance. I think he even says, that's kind of, if something shows up, they're gonna want him. Or maybe he doesn't say that.
I think he
He-
does.
okay.
He says that's the
I was
stupidest
gonna
thing
say
I've
a
ever
lot.
heard.
I was
That's
gonna
like
say a lot of commentaries on point. He
he
might say
said
this.
he says that's like not carrying medical insurance because you can't imagine something happening to you.
Yeah. So Tony is telling Larry King that they're talking to Thor about joining the squad, and Hank Pym is working on some really cool AI stuff. And then he's like, "Of course, we're all disappointed about Bruce Banner that he can't get the soldier serum working yet, but we've found a Captain America, so we don't really need two of these guys."
Full stop. All of that seems like horrible PR that like a big Playboy CEO guy should know better. Like he's just spilling all their secrets. He's airing out all the dirty laundry.
I do his specific line about like, of course we're all disappointed in Dr. Banner. It's like, man, Bruce cannot catch a break.
And imagine like if he had teased, "Oh yeah, we're talking to Thor," and then Thor never joins the team. Like that's just egg on your face,
Yeah.
buddy. Why'd you even bring it up?
Yeah. So we cut back to New York, and Janet Van Dyne Wasp is taking Captain America shopping. And he's like, I cannot believe how expensive everything is. This pair of slacks was $250. And that's just absurd. That's absurd for today's spending. So in 2002, I'm beginning to think, Zach, that these people have no concept of money.
Yeah, they're rich.
And I almost think it's supposed to seem like that by that like comment, that because Janet Van Dyne just laughs it off. She's like, "You are so funny, Captain America." Like, and it's like they must just have, we know they're being thrown millions and millions and millions of dollars at them, but they must be like Lucille Bluth from Arrested Development, where she's like, "What's a banana cost? $20?"
Well, I mean, we know Nick Fury's wardrobe costs $1 million per outfit. So maybe that's like the standard they're comparing it
That's
to.
true.
They're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, Cap, you're shopping, at the Goodwill compared to Nick
Yeah.
Fury." But also, I mean, they're in Manhattan,
Yeah.
maybe they're going just like down Fifth Avenue to the most expensive stores in the world.
Yeah. I wear joggers that are pretty nice every day, and they cost about $80. And they were, to me, that is absurdly expensive. It like took a lot of like wrestling with myself to be like, should I just buy these?
Yeah.
So, all right. So $250 on a pair of pants. And Steve is saying that recently he had a big heart to heart with Bucky over the phone. So he's kind of made up with Bucky, and they're going to meet up for a beer, and maybe Gale will join them. But we don't really hear that much about Gale or Bucky in these two issues. Steve still lives in the same neighborhood as when he was a kid, but now it's kind of a rundown apartment complex, and there's drugs and crime, and the building's vandalized. And I think maybe as they're walking up to his apartment, they realize that he was robbed. Oh, and then in the very next scene, they tell us that that is what happened. Yeah, his door is like kind of cracked open, and they're like, oh my gosh. And then we cut over to the Triskelion.
Hold up real quick. Did you pick up on I think this is funny whenever they give us specific numbers for like how much things cost and you try to like figure out the economic realities of 2002 Ultimate Marvel Universe. Did you see how much he pays for rent?
$650, right?
How is rent that low in New York, but he's out here buying $200 pair of
But
pants.
but walking distance to his apartment, he's spending half of that on a pair of pants.
Yes. That's absolutely insane.
Yeah.
It makes sense why people would rob him. Like, you've got this crummy apartment and all these expensive pants in there.
Yeah, that is funny. I didn't think about that, but that is funny.
I want to cut the part where I started to say I would rob Captain America, because I don't rob people.
No, don't
I
cut
certainly
it.
wouldn't rob him.
Zach would rob Captain America.
But I mean, that's like leaving, $1 million sitting in like the seat of a crappy car in like a really rundown neighborhood.
I have a story. Would you like to hear? Should we take the time?
Yes, can I already guess that it happened when we were doing door-to-door sales?
It happened when we were doing door-to-door sales.
That's where all the fun stories come from.
I was walking back to my car, and it was in not the best neighborhood. And as I'm walking back from like a block away, I can see that there are police cars next to my car and police officers looking into my car. And immediately I'm like, I bet I know why they're looking at my stuff. And it's because I had like $2 bills sticking out of my glove box. And that's exactly why they were looking in there. They were like, is this your car? And I was like, yeah. And they were like, this isn't the best area. You probably don't want to just have like money sticking out of your glove box. And I was like, yeah, sorry about that. And I was just on my way, and it was nothing. But it's funny that you just mentioned that exact same thing. Money just sticking out of the car.
Yeah.
I want to cut this. Not a great story.
Yeah, I want to hammer this home. I want to be really clear. This podcast is firmly anti-theft, anti-robbing people.
Yes.
I was just saying, like, Steve's got to have more street smarts than that.
Yeah. It's not 1945 anymore, which I think is what Janet says to him.
Yeah.
So we're back at the Triskelion, and Dr. Banner is feeling really sorry for Steve that he got robbed, and nobody else seems to care. Betty, Banner's ex-girlfriend, doesn't care, and no one else is talking about it. And Hank Pym is being giant man, and he's just like cheesing for the camera like he always does. He's doing publicity for the team, and no other heroes are really showing up for the publicity tour. Hawkeye is on vacation in the Maldives, it says. He says this is the only weekend his girlfriend could get off, so this is the weekend that they had to go.
We haven't even met him yet, and he's like the guy that like just starts a job and then immediately goes on a vacation. His like first week.
They were like, "Doesn't Fury have some good archer?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, he's on vacation right now. It's the only weekend his girlfriend could get off." So then we go to Norway. And here's where we meet Thor. Fury and Banner go to meet him, and he's drinking outside of what looked to me like a trailer park that is like on fire. But I don't know if it's being attacked. If Thor is the reason it's on fire, I don't know what's happening with it. Do you have any context?
I mean, everyone seems pretty chill, and
Exactly.
like they're not freaking out. I think it's just they have bonfires, like several bonfires, and then they're parked around them.
Okay. I thought it looked to me like the trailers were the things on fire, but that's probably wrong.
I can see why you would think that. It's not, you don't get a super clear image of it. I can tell from context.
Yeah.
People seem like they're just, having a good time.
Yeah. And so we get to meet Thor, and he's pretty based, as the kids would say. What's another word to describe him before we get into everything he says, Zach? In case people don't know what based means.
I hate to say the word woke.
Woke. Okay, I was about to say woke also. Yeah. So he is questioning if S.H.I.E.L.D. is there to arrest him for protesting, and he's like, the media misrepresented. Those were peaceful protests. And then he's kind of joking about Fury's job offer to join the U.S. Marines, which is kind of what he views as the ultimates. And he says, no matter if they wear capes or combat boots, they're all just there to squash anything that tries to corrupt the status quo. And the son of Odin is not interested in working for a military industrial complex who engineers wars and murders innocent.
So
I stan Thor.
Yeah, I've got some thoughts on this. I feel like Mark Millar maybe empathizes more with some of the more like nationalistic hardliner characters in these books, but then he gives Thor these lines where he's just absolutely spitting. And it's like I think he's doing it ironically, but nothing he's saying is wrong. It feels like when The Simpsons have like Lisa say something like that, and then everyone just kind of rolls their eyes, and the joke is, "Oh, look at Lisa, she's read a book." But it's like, no, she was right though.
Okay, both of these two issues, like I said, I think they're like perfect. Obviously, we were pretty young still in like 2002, 2000, that time after like 9/11 when Bush was doing everything with war. But this is like a perfect encapsulation of the other side of this, I think. And I don't know. Yeah, I was thinking he is like on Thor's side, the writer is, but maybe they're kind of like poking fun at hippies or something or other. I don't know.
I think he's representing him really well. Like he doesn't seem like a caricature. He seems like, an like intelligent dude speaking his mind. It's just his opinion goes in opposition to everything else the book seems to stand for. And I'm not sure if that's meant to be like ironic or like
I think
genuine.
He's supposed to be the good guy here, because when we hear about, like, I think the Ultimates are not represented very well, because over and over we hear about how much money they're throwing at them and they don't really have anything to do. And I kind of feel like Thor is supposed to be represented as like being in the right here.
Yeah, I can see that. I just knowing where like these stories continue to go, knowing the direction that the larger narrative takes, I tend to think that it's kind of a center right leaning book.
Well, especially so here's a line that I didn't even say. That's the next thing I wrote down that specifically takes a big shot at Bush and what the US government, but he tells Banner and Fury that they talk about supervillains now, but it's only a matter of time before they're sent to kill for oil. And that's, for any younger listeners that weren't, growing up during the 2001 after 9/11, that's what we would go over and fight for, is like oil.
And had previously done in other wars.
Yeah. The US. Okay, so Banner gets upset about this and he calls Thor a phony and says he's just a nurse who was in an asylum for 18 months. And I'm guessing if Zach were to give us some backstory, that's because there was a time where they thought Thor was like just a man named Donald Blake, I think, who had like amnesia before he knew that he was actually Thor. Is that enough backstory, or should we,
So this is kind of cool. So yeah, that's like the original Stan Lee and Jack Kirby origin from the 60s. This series plays around a lot with the idea, is Thor legit? Because they were trying to make the Ultimate Universe more like rooted and feel like it's grounded in reality somewhat. So the idea of him being like a space Viking god, you could see them not wanting to take that route. So they're like, he has powers, he's super powerful, but he's a crazy guy. We have the records. He was genuinely institutionalized. And so this is playing with that idea of, is he a crazy guy with powers that we have to appease, or is he who he says he is?
Okay. I was wondering that. I was wondering if Banner, when he says he's a phony, if they didn't think he actually had powers,
No,
but
they
they
know he
know
has powers. They
okay.
just think it's unfortunate that he does.
Okay.
They think he's like a mutant or something.
And then Thor seems to have some sort of like ability to read minds because he calls him out for cutting his wrist before going to bed because I guess Banner is like depressed and daydreaming about hurting Hank Pym. And is that a power Thor has? He can read minds, or did he just have some like inside info somehow?
Yeah, not as far as I know, unless they added that to his, character for this and it never comes up again.
Yeah.
I think he just is paying attention and he's like making an informed guess.
Yeah. And Thor says he is there to save the world, but to save it from you people, referring to Fury and Banner. And they walk away. They know a lost cause when they see one. So things are slow at Ultimates HQ. There's no supervillains to fight. Fury, but isn't the point why it is a little silly that they'd be like, you put together this team, now there's no supervillains, so should we defund the team? I mean, shouldn't people be smart enough to know like they should still be a team? There should still be a team for when they're needed. They don't always have to be on the ball doing stuff.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying, but I think it is funny that they address in the book, well, what do they do when, there's not like a constant threat?
Yeah. And here's what they do. Fury, Cap, Pym, and Janet are all sitting around talking about this movie that's coming out for Captain America. He's about to get a 3-picture deal about his life, and Brad Pitt is supposed to play Cap. And so they start talking about who would play each other in movies. And here's the panel that I've referenced a couple times. But someone asked Nick Fury who should play him, and Nick Fury, eating a piece of pizza, says, "Why, Mr. Samuel L. Jackson, of course. That's not even open to debate, Dr. Pym." And then we find out that Fury says Johnny Depp should play Tony Stark. And in the most perfect bit of casting, early 2000s Matthew McConaughey to play Hank Pym, which would just be a perfect goofball, handsome idiot to play him.
Yeah, I don't hate it. This is one of those like fan castings where I'm like, yeah, okay, that kind of makes sense.
And the last casting, Lucy Liu would play Janet, according to Nick Fury. And Cap is like, I don't know who any of these people are.
I think it's interesting that Janet is like, oh, you're just saying that because that's the only other Asian person you can think of besides me. And up until that panel, I didn't even realize
I
she was
had no
supposed to be.
idea she was Asian.
She
Yeah.
wasn't depicted as Asian. She was depicted as just like a white girl with kind of short, spiky hair, which wasn't
Yeah.
uncommon in the 2000s.
Yeah. So we find out Janet is Asian in this scene. And they're kind of making fun of Banner, like who would play Banner? And Pym is like that bug-eyed guy who is like schizophrenic or something. And then they all kind of start making fun of different people. And then Banner turns out he's listening, and he kind of like runs away, sad and upset. And it turns out Hank Pym was just referring to Steve Buscemi, who's great.
Yeah, well,
Also,
he says, I was just going to say Steve Buscemi. What's insulting about that?
yeah.
What a jerk.
So I know. So Bruce calls Betty, and speaking of actors, Betty is at dinner with Freddie Prinze Jr., who is in talks to play either Iron Man or Captain America. And he tells her that he mixed the Hulk serum with Cap's blood and he injected it into himself. And he's got kind of different reasons to do this. First, he's like, well, hopefully it works. And then if it doesn't work, it will hopefully at least give the Ultimates a supervillain to fight, meaning himself as like Hulk or something. But really, he says he just missed being big, and then he passes out. And that is probably partially why he hates Hank Pym so much. Because Hank Pym is like a giant man, and the last thing Bruce says is how much he misses being big.
I had not noticed that layer to it, but I think you might be right.
Yeah. So Banner wakes up from being passed out. He's being transported in an ambulance,
Hold up real quick
Yep.
before we change that page. You notice the word balloon is obscuring Freddie Prinze Jr.'s face? I don't know if they just, like, they didn't like how Brian Hitch drew his face or anything, but, like, you never see his face
Oh my gosh, that's
in
funny. It is.
any of these
It
panels.
is. The word bubble is specifically there to cover his face. It like is almost out of place where they put it. It's
I'm
just to
wondering
cover his face.
if, like, he didn't know who that was and he drew a different actor, or if they were just like, "Oh, he doesn't look like that."
Or maybe they just weren't allowed to use him. I was wondering that about Shannon Elizabeth earlier. I was like, did she have to get did they have to get her permission to do this? Do you think?
I don't know how that works in the modern day. It used to be Marvel Comics, they just draw whoever they wanted in there. But I'm sure at some point that became a legal issue and now they
Well,
have to
they drew
get
George Bush a couple
something.
weeks ago, didn't they?
Maybe it's different if it's like someone that public of a figure.
Yeah.
I mean, think about, like, there's political cartoons that draw, politicians all the time in, like, a
I
negative
think there's like a
light.
parody law or something
Yeah,
like that.
there's some kind of
Satire.
freedom of
Yeah.
speech thing for, like, you know, politicians.
Yeah. So Hulk is in the ambulance and he calls out for Betty and then he just starts thrashing and the paramedics are unable to hold him down and Bruce hulks out, but he kind of looks like he turns into a red Hulk instead of our normal green Hulk. And he says, Hulk wants Freddie Prinze Jr. And the Ultimates are gearing up to go get Hulk. Tony says, we better start putting some kind of plan together. And Cap, finishing putting on his suit, says, the plan couldn't be simpler, Tony. And then we get a full page drawing of the Ultimates in their suits kind of together. And Cap finishes his thought, we just hit him until he drops. And then the Avengers theme starts.
Yeah, that panel goes hard. You can tell that's like the scene in the movies where they try to get the whole gang in one shot.
That panel does go hard. If our editor, wanted to put in the Avengers theme after I said that, he could.
They should have sold it like one of those,
you open
birthday
it up
cards that sing to you. They should have put that thing in the comic so you flip the page and it plays the Avengers theme.
That'd be great. Yep, we've got Cap suited up, Tony behind him, and then Giant Man Huge and Wasp standing on a balcony.
I haven't mentioned this before, but I love that Iron Man design. Like his helmet shape is like weird, like in a way that we've never seen before in like other media. He kind of reminds me of like one of the like skins that you could like put on your Spartan in Halo.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah. That's like exactly what it looks like. Yeah, it is different from normal. It's growing on me. It's not as good as the regular
You don't think
ones,
so?
but no. It kind of looks like if you saw Wakanda Forever, I think it kind of looks like the Iron Man suit that the girl makes in that.
Oh, the Ironheart
Yeah.
suit.
But I don't know. What'd you think of this issue?
I liked it. I could feel like the tension rising, between the different characters, and I mean, the point of it was kind of that it was slow and that they had this downtime, but you can tell it's like rising action.
Yeah. Yeah. I liked it a lot. I was expecting a lot of Thor, and then he was really only in it for like 1 or 2 pages
because he was on the cover.
Yeah, and it's called Thunder.
Yeah.
Which was probably the most disappointing part reading through it. But I still really liked it, and I thought it was really good, like learning about all the other team members. And I do still love Thor in this, even though we only see him for a little bit. So I rated it pretty good. I gave it, or I should say, I went out and I bought 8 out of 10 pairs of $250 pants.
All right. Yeah. I'm right there with you. I feel like, Thor, he didn't get as much of a moment as I would have liked, but he like stole the show in the panels that he was in. And I liked them sitting around talking about their casting. Obviously, the Samuel L. Jackson panel is iconic. And then
Yeah.
it set us up for a big action-packed follow-up issue.
Yes. This final line from Captain America where Tony's like, "We need a plan," and Cap's like, "We have a plan. We're just gonna hit him until he drops." It reminds me of in the first Avengers. This is a line that I actually think is kind of silly, but it's funny. But Captain America is like, "We can't just go fight him. We need a plan of attack." And Tony Stark's like, "I have a plan. Attack."
This reminded me of that exact same line. Like,
Did it really?
if
Did
you
it?
hadn't mentioned that, I was like a second away from mentioning it myself.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, then there must be something to that. Maybe
It
I don't know.
definitely influenced it, but they were probably
Yeah.
like, "Oh, this suits Iron Man better than Captain America."
Yeah.
All right, cool. So we both gave it an 8 out of 10. We ready to move on to issue 5?
Let's move on. Let's get to this action-packed finale of this.
Yeah. It's like the mid-season finale because we're about halfway through I guess not quite, but in my mind, like we're about halfway through the
And we still don't have a
series.
real villain because now like Hulk is the villain that they're fighting basically.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of taken a while to see, where the big baddie's going to come from. Although I think we've had hints at it. Okay, so issue 5, this one is again written by Mark Millar, penciled by Brian Hitch. And we open on a fleet of military helicopters flying over a flaming Manhattan, airlifting Giant Man from the bottom. And Nick Fury tells the team via headset that in 10 minutes, the Hulk has killed dozens of people, drunk a truck full of beer, and is currently stealing a huge pair of pants from a fat corpse. Wonder how much those pants cost.
Oh my gosh. What a wild way for this to open. He killed dozens of people, drunk a truck full of beer, and is stealing a huge pair of pants from a fat corpse. That's like almost a word for word how the issue starts.
Yeah. That's because I did write it down
Yeah.
word for word. I think it's funny, like, how people are always like, how is it that when the Hulk grows big, his shirt and shoes and everything rip, but his pants don't? It's like, in this universe, apparently they do. He just steals a pair of pants.
But it's also funny that did he find some guy who's like Hulk sized just by himself and took his like no fat man is as big as the Hulk.
Yeah, it makes no sense. The team's plan is to stick Banner with a Hulk antidote housed in a syringe with an adamantium tip. So, contrary to what Cap said at the end of the last issue, they do have somewhat of a plan. And Iron Man asks about Thor, and Fury says he sent him an email saying he's happy to help if President Bush doubles the international aid budget. To which Tony says, "Wonderful. So we're effectively on our own here."
I think then this is a good enough time as any. We could have said this in the last one when we're talking about Thor, but now this issue, Thor is like all about getting like the international aid budget doubled.
Yeah.
And I just love the idea of this Thor that is an otherworldly being. So he's been to hundreds of worlds that each have their own like countries and lifestyles and everything. And he's like, the worst thing in the world right now is the US military industrial complex. Like, there's like a million worlds he could be dealing with and people. And he's like, the United States government is where I just think that that's like a funny thing for him to be doing with his time. It's not a wrong thing for him to be thinking or doing with his time, but
these guys are so much worse than the fire demons and the dark elves that I'm used to.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I feel like the fact that like he's sitting this one out and letting civilians die unless that budget gets doubled, I feel like that's part of where it makes me think that this was like maybe criticizing or poking fun at people like Thor because, he's letting this like ideological good cost people like their actual lives. It's
Yeah.
like
And that's a better way, I think, of saying exactly what I just said about, like, is this, like, what because even on Earth, if he's, like, upset about international stuff, go fly around to another country and, like, put people in their place. You're a god.
Yeah, or
So,
you can, like, bring a storm, why not end droughts, you know?
yeah.
Yeah. Um, so Cap says he likes their 4-to-1 odds and that he hasn't lost a fight since 1942 and he doesn't plan on losing now. And the Hulk starts climbing a building while yelling for Betty, and he finds the restaurant that Betty is in. It's like a rooftop fancy restaurant. And she starts running for the exit from him, and just as Hulk is about to climb into the building, Giant Man grabs him and says, "Oh, for God's sake, Banner, shut up. You're giving science a bad name."
Can we go into the types of things Hulk is saying, or did you just want to breeze past all of it?
You can if you want to. I didn't add him.
But Hulk is like climbing up the building, and he's like screaming about Freddie Prinze Jr. and Banner. He's like, "You're supposed to be Banner's girlfriend. Get away from Freddie Prinze Jr." And then he goes, "Banner too much of a woman for you, Betty? Maybe it's time you gave Hulk a try, huh?" And then also a couple times, which I'm only going to mention because I did take points off in this issue, Hulk talks about how like horny he is, and it's just weird. It just isn't necessary.
Yeah, that's kind of a theme. So
It is
we've
a theme because he mentions it like 3 times.
yeah, we've talked about how the Ultimates line, like especially the way Mark Millar imagines it, you don't see it as much in Ultimate Spider-Man, but in all the Mark Millar books, things get darker to a level that's not always necessary. And I think he kind of reimagines the Hulk's like rage issues that we see in all the other comics as just every vice kind of turned up to 11. So not only is he angry when he's the Hulk, he gets like horny to a level where he gets kind of rapey. Like
Oh
it
my gosh. Do we have to deal with this the whole run? This is what Hulk is like?
he's
It's
not a
not
good
just because he drank a truck full of beer
I
tonight.
mean, he's not a good dude. You hear the things he's saying and it's funny because it's ridiculous, but then it makes you like worry what would he do when he finally gets a hold of her?
Yeah.
Nothing
Uh,
good.
so okay. I guess we'll get to it more later on in the series, but is Hulk like a member of the team as Hulk, or is he really just a member of the team as Banner?
I'll say this, that'd be pretty uncomfortable if he was a member of the team at all after all of this, right? I mean, he just killed 12 people, they
Oh my
said.
gosh, that does remind me of what the very last pages of this comic, and I kind of love it. So, I
Yeah. And what I don't like also is the implication like the some of those 12 people were the EMT workers that were like trying to take care of him in the ambulance when he hulked out. Like
yeah,
I mean, these were like good people who were like trying to do right. I don't know. I
yeah.
don't like this Ultimate Hulk at
No,
all.
I definitely didn't either.
I think maybe the coolest thing about him that they change up is the fact that he's not green anymore. He's like gray.
That was one of the things later on after this issue. I wrote about the things I didn't really like about the Hulk, and that was one of the things that I also didn't like was I can't even tell what color he is. Is he red or is he gray? Or sometimes I think he even looks like human colored. Like he's just like there's one scene where he just looks like a big ugly human baby, I think. And so but anyway, I'll let
He's
you get back into it.
he's gray, and there's a good purpose for that. It's to differentiate him from the regular universe Hulk, which I think is fine. And then it's a reference to when the original Hulk comic was like made back in the 60s. They got the coloring wrong, or just like the way the paper soaked up the colors. Um, I think he was supposed to be maybe human colored or something, but
Mm.
he came out gray. And then they eventually changed that to green, but it's a reference to when he was gray very early on.
Okay. The panel I'm specifically talking about is on page 13. So when you get there, you'll see what I mean. And he just looks like a giant baby.
Oh yeah, I can see that. Um anyways, so Giant Man grabs Hulk and Hulk breaks through Hank's grasp and lunges into his face and shouts, "You always make Banner look like an idiot in front of Betty, Pym. That's why Hulk's gonna tear off your head and use it like a toilet bowl." And he tries to pry Hank's mouth open to break his jaw until Iron Man flies into him and blasts them both into Grand Central Terminal. And Hulk rips Tony's mask off and says he wants to eat him. That's another thing this Hulk does. And Tony yells, "Eat this, moron!" and emits what seems to be a sonic blast from his suit that buys him some time. And Tony tells Fury he's only on 25% power and asks, "If I empty my reserves, can you cover me long enough for support to juice me up again?" And Fury says yes, so Tony hits Hulk with everything he's got, knocking him through the roof of Grand Central. And Wasp is the next member of the team to take on Hulk. And
How is she gonna do that, I wonder? I mean, Wasp has a bunch of cool powers, and she's one of the original Avengers, and so I'm sure she's gonna have some way of dealing with this that is just like awesome and cool and really superhero like.
yeah, she's a legitimate superhero in her own right. She's the one they wanted to, um, bring into the team more so than her husband, Giant Man. And so naturally, she decides the best thing she can do is get Hulk's attention by flashing him and asking, "Hey Banner, Betty Ross have a rack as nice as these?" Yeah.
Excellent use of your powers.
Yeah, way to go, Mark Millar. Um and it works, I guess. It distracts Hulk and he starts trying to catch Jan as she flies around. Again, I don't like, whatever he would probably do to her if he did catch her. Um but I don't even know what the distraction is really for cuz it's not like they do anything with it. Um
No, I think what didn't it uh, so I'm pretty sure they say Wasp. Okay, Cap says, "Wasp, you're up next." Or Cap doesn't say this, but he says, "Wasp, you're up next. Cap wants Banner up on 42nd and 5th ASAP. You copy?" So I think she is trying to draw him to somewhere, is what the
Gotcha.
plan is.
Okay. I just didn't see
And
any
he's gonna
panels that looked
chase a
like they were.
naked lady around.
Yeah, I just didn't see any panels that made it look like they actually covered a lot of distance, so I didn't realize she got him to that target. Um, but I guess that makes sense now. It really doesn't, but it kind of does. And Fury says, "Cap's ready to relieve you, Jan. Fall back." And we see something drop from the sky with a large crash. And once the dust settles, we realize that object was a tank with Captain America as its sole occupant inside. So I'm thinking, oh, cool. We're going to get to see like Cap driving a tank and like trying to shoot the Hulk with it and, maybe get a little bit of that. But nope, before he can use it, Hulk bursts through the floor of the tank and slams Cap through one of its sidewalls. So I guess Brian Hitch just wanted to draw a tank.
Well, I read this scene differently. And I really liked what Cap was doing in here. Okay, so let me give you what I thought was happening in this scene. So Cap drops down in his tank, and the first thing they say to him is, "Just watch your rear end there, Captain. I and the Sky Heat Tracers are picking up movement beneath that underside of yours." And Cap says, "Relax, soldier. Everything's going exactly as planned." And then Hulk bursts up through the floor, and I thought it looked like Cap was like ready for it and immediately just like kicked him square in the face when he came up, and it like blows Hulk backwards. So I thought this was like the plan, kind of, Captain America's ready for him to jump up because as soon as he does, he just like knocks him out.
I think this speaks to a larger issue that we've had now on both episodes where we've covered the Ultimates. I like Brian Hitch's art style. I like his character renditions. I like, the body language and the action and stuff. But I don't think, at least at this point in his career, he's a very good visual storyteller because there have been multiple times. Think back to like that first
Oh
issue with
yeah,
Captain America in World War II, where like we ask ourselves, what is happening right now? You
yeah,
know, you need to maybe have, you know, better points of view or show motion or time passing or have a little
yeah,
filler panel. It's like he'll skip from point A to point B. It'll be like, we'll see someone in one room and then we'll see him in another and he'll have skipped them walking through a doorway or something like that.
yeah. I see what you. Yeah, definitely. There have been things that they could have been more clearly drawn.
Yeah. So as we alluded, Cap and Hulk start fighting hand to hand in the street, and Cap punches Hulk in the nose, kicks him in the crotch, uppercuts him with his shield, and sweeps his legs. And it looks like that's all maybe one really fast, controlled move. And he's about to inject the antidote when Fury asks, "You just take down the Hulk?" And Cap answers, "Banner's not the only one around here with super soldier serum pumping through his heart, chum. Now get me a med team pronto. This little guy isn't going to be in the best shape after I stick this antidote in his neck." And the moment of hesitation he takes to say this costs Cap, as it gives a Hulk time to reach up and grab his arm. And Wasp tells us, "Oh my god, he broke the needle." So again, that's something that I would have maybe liked the art to have shown us instead of a speech bubble.
Definitely, because this is a specific one where we kind of read these two scenes a little bit differently, because I didn't think Cap's hesitation is what cost him not being able to stick the needle in. I thought the needle just didn't go in and then Hulk broke it. Like trying to put the needle in broke the adamantium needle
His
is what
skin was stronger than the metal.
is what I kind of read it as. So once again, maybe it could have been a little bit more clear what happened.
Definitely. And Fury tells an agent, "Ready the nuke for the backup plan." And Hulk starts bashing Cap in the face, saying, "Hulk thought you were different, but you're just as bad as them, Rogers. Hulk gonna smash your head open and suck out the yolk, you ugly piece of crap."
Oh. Get this guy off the superhero team.
He really wants to eat people.
Yeah.
We see the New York skyline illuminated by a huge lightning strike, and we see Thor standing over Hulk with his hammer to Hulk's head. And an aide tells Nick Fury, "Message from the White House, General. The president just doubled our international aid budget." AIDS.
Aid.
Aid. Our international aid budget. Yeah, they're not doing anything for AIDS. And Fury replies, "And to think I voted for Ralph Nader." Which again that's a timely reference, but I don't feel like that'd be right. I don't see Nick Fury as an idealist. I see him as a pragmatist. Like if he was gonna vote Democrat, he would have voted Al Gore. And
Yeah.
being this big,
Fury's probably voting for Bush anyways for
yes,
the defense budget.
yeah, that's the one that's gonna like greenlight all his little projects.
Yeah. If you wanted international aid, then you'd be voting for the other guy maybe. But once again, this is so funny that Thor is like just gonna let all these people die, and then Bush calls him up and he's like, "Fine, we'll just double it. Go save everything."
Yeah. So Thor hits Hulk 2 more times, and the ground shakes and cracks with both strikes. And he proclaims, "Your jaw is broken, your ribs are cracked, and one of your lungs has just been punctured, Banner. Have you tested enough of Mjolnir yet?" And Hulk smiles and says, Nah, Thor's hammer makes Hulk horny for Betty again, hippie.
What?
We're gonna move past it.
Thor's
And
hammer kind of looks more like Stormbreaker to me. It doesn't
it
look like a hammer.
it does. I mean, he's using the hammer side, but the other side is an
Yeah,
axe. Yeah, but it looks cool though.
it does.
Hulk knocks Thor several blocks down the street, and we see SHIELD agents airlift Freddie Prinze Jr. and Betty Ross from the roof of their building, saying, "Your safety is our prime concern." And then in the very next panel, we see that that was a lie, and Fury says, "Cap, this is Nick. Prinze and Ross are in the air. I repeat, Honey Trap is in the air, just like you requested." And Cap tells...
Wait, okay, so explain what just happened, because I don't think I caught this the first time I was reading it.
Okay, so Fury says to Captain America, "Honey Pot is in the air, just like you requested." And then the very next thing
yeah.
the very next thing we see Captain America do is he tells Hulk where he can find Betty, saying, "She's in the air, meatball."
So Shield is like, Freddie, Prinze, and Betty, we need to get you guys in the air in a helicopter away from the crime scene. And then the second they get in the crime scene, they're like, okay, our trap is working. They're in the air, just like we want them to be.
And they tell Hulk to follow them.
Oh my gosh, this is just...
They're literally putting these
There's a lot
civilians...
Yeah, I'm not sure about this Cap and Nick Fury. That seems like a Fury thing to do. That doesn't seem like a Captain America thing to do.
Yeah. And Hulk tosses Cap aside and starts climbing a building, yelling, "Get back here, Betty. Don't leave Banner alone again." And this just reminds me of the first episode we did on the Ultimates, where he was like, "Oh, she broke up with me because I was," air quotes, "toxic." It's like, yeah, I think you were.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, actually seeing this and then like rereading that part, I felt bad for Banner in the first couple issues, but it's kind of hard to now.
He's such a sad boy. He's
obviously Hank Pym was the right one this whole time.
I don't think there is a right one. The right one is like maybe Thor, but
he is such a sad boy. Finish that thought.
He's like, "Oh no, I can't do this without you coddling me and being, my girlfriend and being nice to me. Like, I could just turn into a monster and kill everyone. We wouldn't want that, Betty, would we?"
Oh my gosh.
Dude sucks. So Thor asks Cap what he's doing, and Cap says, "What does it look like? Luring Banner out to sea in case we're forced to opt for a tactical nuclear assault, of course." And Thor asks him if he's using those people as bait, and Cap says, "Only if the other 3 plants I have on standby take a dive."
That's a Cap thing to do. That's a good line.
That he has all these plans.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, but I feel like
he strikes me as the Batman of the MCU, kind of. That's what I think of when I think of Captain America.
Maybe in this series, I feel like he's just a little bit more morally ambiguous or flexible in this, because I feel like regular Cap, would have 3 or 4 plans on how to deal with the Hulk, but I don't think he would let any of them involve
like a trap with innocent people.
Yeah. And also, if they're going to nuke Banner at sea, they're going to destroy that helicopter too. They're also nuking Betty and Freddie Prinze.
Well, Hollywood actors are a dime a dozen, Zach. You know that.
I'm not going to say Hollywood saw his career as expendable shortly after this comic came out, but we'll just say there's a reason kids today don't know Freddie Prinze Jr.
I think I only know him as he was in Scooby-Doo. I barely know what Freddie Prinze Jr. was ever in.
Wasn't he also Agent Cody Banks?
Was he John Tucker Must Die, maybe? No, he wasn't.
Surely
Agent Cody
not.
Banks was Frankie Muniz.
Oh, yeah. Shoot. I know he was in stuff when we were kids. I just can't even think of what it was.
Yeah.
Who was he in Scooby-Doo? He was
Fred,
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. trying to picture his face and what else he was in. Literally can't remember.
I'm not even gonna look it up. I don't care. Get nuked, Freddie Prinze Jr.
So we see that Wasp is inside of Banner's head, crawling towards his frontal lobes. I guess maybe she went in through his ear or nose or something. And she gives Banner a sting to a part of his brain that makes him the Hulk. And he falls out of the helicopter and lands on the pier. And he turns back into Dr. Bruce Banner and says to Captain America, "Don't hurt me. Please. I was only trying to help. This was all part of the plan, you see. I was only trying to come up with a menace you could all get together to fight. I know you aren't going to kick me and punch me or anything, because I really couldn't handle that kind of thing right now." And Cap tells him, "Don't be ridiculous. Why would I hit you, Bruce? You're one of the gang. Part of the team, for God's sake. I'm just here to make..."
I was really upset after Cap said this. I read that panel, and that's pretty much read it word for word. But he says, "Why would I hit you, Bruce? You're one of the gang, for God's sakes, part of the team." And I was like, give me a break. This guy just caused so much damage. He's been like rapey, like Zach said.
Yeah, and it wasn't an accident. He didn't Hulk out on
No, all on
accident.
purpose.
Yeah. Don't you see? I committed millions of dollars in property damage and killed 12 plus people so that you guys would all be friends. And Cap says, "I'm just here to make sure those cuts and bruises of yours get the proper attention, pal. Come here, let me get a closer look at that big gash on your cheek." And Banner says, "But I don't have a gash on my cheek." And Cap kicks him in the face, knocking him out. And he says, "You do now, son. Dig out a straitjacket in size 34, General. We're bringing him in."
Incredible. 2 issues in a row where Captain America just steals the last page entirely. I loved it. That scene of the drawing of Cap just booting this guy in the face was very satisfying.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
What, you didn't
you
like
also
that?
No, I mean, in the context, I get it, but also I feel like he's risking turning him into the Hulk again after they just went to all that trouble of like making him Banner.
Yeah,
So it kind of feels like a selfish move. Like he did it out of anger, not out of like
definitely.
rationality. And also it doesn't feel like something the 616 Cap would do. It feels like he'd be like, "Okay, slap the cuffs on him and let's just get him out of here."
Let me try to think. What would he do with Bucky as the Winter Soldier?
Well, that's totally different. He likes Bucky. No one
Yeah.
likes Bruce Banner.
Yeah. I thought it was kind of funny. Banner's like crawling to him like naked, and he's like, "You're not gonna hit me, are you?" And Cap's like, "No, you're part of the team, buddy." It's like one of those things where it's like, my head hurts so much, and it's like, well, I could kick you in the chest and it'd make you stop thinking about how much your head hurts. Cap just fumbles him. It's good. I dug it.
Yeah, I'm definitely seeing that like Bruce is kind of the one propagating all of these like self-fulfilling
Definitely.
prophecies about himself. Like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I'm just such a helpless wimp. Nobody likes me." And then he acts like a helpless wimp that no one could possibly like.
Yeah.
Like goes out of his way, to put on this facade.
Yeah. And kind of a smaller thing, but it's kind of where I started to not like him, was that first scene with Thor when Thor is spitting facts and Banner like kind of like attacks him, not like physically, but he's like, "What are you talking about? You're a phony. You're, blah blah blah." And I'm like, "Get him out of here." Well, I didn't like this one as much as the first one. There were parts of it I really liked, but I don't really like the Hulk. We've talked about it a lot. I don't like how he acts or how he looks.
The characterization there is just so gratuitous.
Yeah.
It's exhausting. It doesn't come across as like new and innovative and fun. It's just exhausting.
Yeah. But I kind of liked Captain America's growing on me quite a bit. So I like that. Thor's entrance was a good one in the fight. It was pretty expected. As soon as things started, I was like, oh, Thor's going to come in and save the day here. But it didn't disappoint. I gave this one, I don't have a grading scale. I gave it something out of 10, but I don't have a grading scale. So if you have one.
Let's do it out of $10 million to the international aid budget. I don't know why I keep saying AIDS.
Well, I'm going to give this one
AIDS. I have AIDS.
Oh my gosh.
I got to go to the front of the line.
Sunny reference.
Thank you.
I'm going to give this one $6 million in international aid money out of $10 million total.
Okay. Man, it's like the parts that I like about this, I really like the widescreen action shots, just every issue continues what we said the last time we looked at these. It's formatted like a widescreen, like action movie, and it really works in this fight heavy issue. It makes it so engaging and exciting, and Thor works, and the action works, and the art is cool, even though it's not easy to follow. But then you get the whole Hulk thing, and Janet flashing her boobs, and
what's
the dialogue.
Janet, at least, and we didn't really mention it. You mentioned at the end she like crawls up inside Hulk and like it stabs his brain with something. That's a cool way for her to use her powers.
Yeah, if she had done that originally,
exactly.
This issue could have been way shorter.
Yeah, it's just like, why did we need that one little scene of her flashing him to get her to follow it? Couldn't we have just skipped that part and just gone to him chasing them on the helicopter? And then we still get to use her powers in a cool way. But it does seem like the writers of this have sex on the mind when they're like making these issues.
Yeah, sex, gore, violence, hyper-nationalism. I don't know. This is a very good issue to indicate what the Ultimates is, because the highs are really high and the lows are really low and very cringeworthy. So I think I'm going to be with you at 6 million out of 10 million, dollars to the international aid budget. Part of me wants to give it a 7. Part of me wants to give it a 5. So 6 just feels, right in the middle.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I can see MCU Captain America just booting someone when they're, I feel like a Hydra guy who, he just knock him out. Even when the fight's over, I feel like I could see him and giving him a line. You do now.
Maybe. I mean, do you see how much the MCU seems to have taken from some of these characters?
Yeah, definitely.
It just made them better, more likable people.
Yeah. It made them not quite so rough around the edges.
Yeah.
What are we doing next week? You got anything else on these?
Nope. I'm done with Ultimates for now.
We don't get to do 6 and 7 next week?
We're doing Spider-Man. Did you not want to cover Spider-Man on our Ultimate Spider-Man pod? Wearing your Spider-Man hat?
I just like the complete stories. Now we're going to go. I want to know who the Ultimates are fighting. I have a sneaking suspicion Loki might come in, and I want to see that happen. But I don't know if that happens or not. You just told me it kind of follows the first Avengers movie, so I'm thinking maybe we'll get to see Loki.
I'll say this, and I'll issue maybe a more specific content warning next week before we go into another Ultimates episode. It's going to get worse before it gets better. It does get better, but we're about to hit a patch that I'm really
let's go back into Spider-Man.
Not looking forward to. But yeah, so next week, where is it? Okay. Next week, we are going to be reading Ultimate Spider-Man issue 28 and Ultimate Spider-Man 1/2. That's the one that is not on Marvel Unlimited that we're getting in the mail.
Okay. Nice. That'll be good.
Yeah.
And where did we leave off in that?
In Ultimate Spider-Man,
Yeah. Do you remember?
they just defeated the Green Goblin, and then
Yeah.
we got that one like special issue that was the Become a
yearly
Superhero
review. Yep.
project. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good. Oh, so we're almost starting like a new season of Ultimate Spider-Man now, you could say.
Yeah, if you want to think of it as a new season, I do think of the Goblin Returns arc as kind of the end of the first chapter of
Yeah.
Ultimate Spider-Man. So yeah, we're about to start something different.
Okay. Nice. Well, that'll be exciting.
Not getting to our 90-minute limit this
I
week.
know.
But
Wow, this is going to be a quick listen.
it is what it is. Sorry for anyone who had specifically an hour and a half commute that they were looking for us to fill.
Yeah. All right. Well, Zach, last words.
Be kind, do good.
Love it. Thank you so much to Ian Hickey for the music and Alyssa Seaman for our artwork. And you can find us on Instagram at First Read Podcast. You can find us on YouTube at the Ultimate Spider-Man Podcast. The video I put up did not get copyright banned, by the way.
Yet.
If you want to see Dumbledore and the Avengers show up and save the day for some stupid thing I edited, leave us a comment. Zach and I love it. We love reading them and meeting you guys. Right?
Yeah, you guys have been really good with like nice, friendly, kind feedback. Tell us what you hate about us. Drive up those, that hate interaction, because I mean that boosts us just as much.
Yeah. Anything for engagement.
Yeah.
Okay, nice. We'll see you next week. Have a great week, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.